So one of the factors affecting education achievement is class. So looking at why working class underachieve in education, there's external factors and internal factors. One of the external factors is material deprivation, which links to ideas such as poor diet, poor health, low wages and poverty. So if a child's family has low wages, they are less likely to go to nursery, they can't afford the resources to help them in education, such as books, and they might also need to get part-time jobs, which takes up studying time. Another external factor is the catchment area that they live in, which is usually working class living areas with social problems such as delinquency and drug abuse, so they have poor role models, and this usually has worse schools in this area. Another factor is home circumstances. So Walford and Washbrook found that working class children are more likely to live in damp or crowded homes, making studying more difficult. Another factor is the concept of cultural capital and therefore cultural deprivation, which Baudrillard thought of. So this is where they have the lack of the correct values or inadequate socialisation that would help them in education, so they're not exposed to stuff like high culture, such as Shakespeare. Putnam also came up with the idea of less social capital, so they don't have the social networks to help them in education. And this makes them more likely to form anti-school subcultures. Another idea is they have language, poor language. So Bernstein came up with the idea of elaborate code, which is used in schools, and the restricted code, which is more like slang, which the working class are more likely to use, which aren't in exams. And then the other external factor is the parents, so that can be the parents' attitudes to education or the parents' education levels themselves. If they have low education levels, they can't help with homework, they don't know which books to buy, and sometimes they won't encourage their child to stay on past the minimum leaving age. And Goodman and Gregg found high levels of parental interest led to better exam results. Then internal factors, so the idea of the cultural class, so they have one culture in their home, such as working class culture, then the middle class culture of school. There's also pressure from league tables and educational triage, which leads to streaming, and it was found that only 11% of working class students go to Oxford or Cambridge. And then teachers' attitudes, such as stereotyping, the hidden curriculum, the halo effect, and the self-fulfilling prophecy leads to lower expectations. And Becker found that teachers search for the ideal student, which is usually working middle class. And to sum this up, Francis and Perry said social class is the strongest predictor of educational achievement in the UK. And the National Equality Panel said the highest achievers in schools come from the most advantaged areas. And this is backed up by Gibson and The greater the level of family disadvantage measured in terms of lack of parents' qualifications, unemployment, the smaller the percentage of students gaining 5 or more GCSE grades A star to C. Bordeaux said schools are middle class run by middle class, and knowledge, communication, interaction of middle class pupils are nurtured and rewarded by the education system. And Michael Gove summed up by saying rich, thick kids do better than poor, clever children. To evaluate this, particularly Bernstein's ideas, Labov said the working class speech is not inferior, and in fact middle class speech wastes time on detail. Roseanne said it's a myth because Bernstein didn't have enough examples or cases of it. And Kiddy said it's not superior, it's just a cultural difference. So there's no cultural deprivation, but merely a cultural difference. The idea of cultural deprivation fails to recognise the cultural strengths of those said to be deprived. It also downplays the similarities between the beliefs and attitudes of both classes, and Douglas found that they mistakes the lack of confidence in parents for the practical difficulties such as shift work. And there's also policies such as education action zones that try to improve working class chances. And they also ignore the factors of gender and ethnicity. To link to social policy, many policies have helped the working class and some have hindered them. So, for example, Sure Start centres give those in disadvantaged areas better start in life, and the educational maintenance allowance gave money to those from disadvantaged areas to study A-levels and uni, and they were both brought in by the Labour governments. Labour, however, did bring in tuition fees to pay at uni, so many working class students didn't go as they feared debt. There was also acts such as the tripartite system, so less working class students would go to grammar schools. However, there was the student premium brought in by the coalition government, whereas schools with free school meal students got extra resources to help them. And also the idea of marketisation hindered them.